Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to the League 2 Lowdown as part of the Debt Network. My name is Jordan Richards. It's great to be back on the channel. It's the first time calling it League 2 Lowdown, of course, formerly known as Fourth Tier Fever, as some might know. Really interesting, that, and one that will probably take some getting used to. I'll probably call it Fourth Tier Fever again down the line when I'm on future podcasts. Bit of an interesting one tonight. Would you believe it? Out of a group that's got 7 hosts, I was the only one available tonight. It should have been myself and Jack Mitchener. I feel like I'm singling him out a little bit. Not at all. He's somewhat had to call it off late. So, and the others aren't about. Luke's ill, Jack Walton and Harry Gunner not available, and Jake and Kieran are nowhere to be seen, as you'd probably expect. I feel like I've digged Jack Mitchener out, and I feel like I've got to do the others as well. It's just fair game, isn't it? But that means I've somewhat dipped into the emergency loan market, I guess you could sort of say. And I am pleased to be joined by Mark Halliwell, Cheltenham Town fan and broadcaster, who joins us this evening. Mark, thank you so much again for doing this at somewhat short, late notice. How's everything at your end?
Yeah, no problem, Jordan. Thanks for having me on, and it's nice to be 8th choice. I'll take that. You know, with the way that Cheltenham are going at the moment, you know, I think you've gone to the bottom, so it's all right.
Absolutely. Let's not waste any more time. You've mentioned Cheltenham, and I've obviously mentioned you do quite a lot of stuff around Cheltenham, of course, being a fan. Let's start with their game whilst we're here. Coming up against a Newport County side, obviously this weekend. 2 games into Steve Cotterill's second reign at the club, a win and a draw. Very good start for him, obviously, from the nightmare start to the season you've had. Obviously, the 7-1 defeat to us. That'll be the only time I'll mention that result in this podcast. Coming up against a Newport County side that have also had their struggles this season. Did pick up a very good victory against Accrington Stanley last weekend. Another side that you probably expect to be in and around that position come the end of the season. Now, we'll start with your thoughts on this one, Mark. Obviously, it's the 2 teams in the bottom 2 coming at it at the start of the day. And you get the feeling that it's a very big game for both in this early stage of the season, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think if this was coming around a couple of weeks ago, I think we'd have been going into it with a little bit more trepidation than we probably are now, because these last 2 games, I think, have given us a lot of hope. And of course, with Steve coming back, a little bit of context for those who don't know, 23 years ago, he was manager of our club, took us from the Southern League Premier Division to League One. Before he left, went to Stoke first of all, and then embarked on a career around the leagues, more than 1,000 games. And now he's back. And for supporters like me who are a bit longer in the tooth than some, you know, it's a really special thing to have him back at our club. I mean, I don't know who Grimsby's most successful manager of all time would be, Jordan, but it's akin probably to having that manager back at your club, if you understand where I'm coming from. So it's a really big thing for Cheltenham, and he's already made a massive difference on the field. Obviously, you mentioned that game at Blundell Park, which was a disaster, really. But since then, we've beaten Fleetwood. We drew at Gillingham last week, last-minute equaliser. I know we were under the cosh for a lot of that game, but it's given Cheltenham fans a lot of hope, really, that they can turn this season around and start moving up the table. And Saturday's game at Newport, I think, gives us a chance to do that. I really did. I was starting to worry for Newport, I must say, and David Hughes. I was starting to worry for them. There was actually time, and a lot of Cheltenham fans were saying, "Oh, perhaps David Hughes might go, and Michael Flynn might end up back at Newport in time to play Cheltenham again." So that might have been an interesting one. But I think that win, that was a very good win and a much needed win for them at Accrington last week. So it's going to be an interesting one, really. I think even at this stage of the season, it looks like an important game, doesn't it? Because if one or the other side wins, then they've got a 3-point jump, and the other one's going to be left bottom of the table. And I'm sure we'll talk about Shrewsbury, Crawley later on. That's another game. So the 2 teams above are playing each other as well. So even at this early stage, it's quite an important quite an important day for those clubs who haven't started the season very well.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a game that I'm looking forward to. I mean, if we're looking at past couple of games, obviously, as mentioned, Cheltenham, a win and a draw, a very good win against Fleetwood, and obviously the killer draw last week. You did mention was under the cosh against Gillingham. They're a top side anyway,
Yeah,
but maybe for that last minute equaliser right at the end must have felt like a right sickener.
It was
for that as well, for especially going in front so late on.
Yeah, I mean they had 30 shots on goal.
Yeah.
It was a strange game because they had 30 shots on goal. Yet I never felt at any time that Joe Day, our goalkeeper, was tremendously overworked. And Isaac Hutchinson, who's been really good for us since coming in on loan from Bristol Rovers, he scored 3 goals for us this season. He could have had a hat-trick because he hit the post in the first half. He had a really good chance in the second that he put wide, and then he hit the bar, which came down for Sam Sherring to head in. And those signings, Hutchinson and Sherring, who came in on deadline day just before Michael Flynn left, and then since then the signing of Ben Stevenson as a free agent, and now Jonathan Tompkinson as well as a free agent, have really made a difference and really added something to our squad. And it shows really that the previous recruitment over the summer hasn't been the best, but these 4 signings have really given us a lift and made us look a different team. And long may it continue. And hopefully we can go to Rodney Parade and get something. I mean, 700 Cheltenham fans going down at the moment, so that shows really that the supporters are well behind it. And it's weird because you wouldn't know Cheltenham were bottom of the league. The way the supporters are, there's a lot of optimism around with the supporters, and that's all down to one man. It's all down to the return of Steve Cottrell.
Absolutely. And great support as well, has got to be said. Of course, as mentioned, coming up against Newport. Very good win for them, as I've mentioned, against Accrington last week. That was on top of their victory against Cardiff in the Virtue Motors. Not sure if you maybe read too much into that, but at the same time, probably what they needed as well is maybe spring them for that victory as well. But ultimately, as I've mentioned, it's 23rd against 24th. Both sides currently on at 8 points, and a win for any of them will do, I think, the world of good. I've got to push you for a score prediction. If you're going to ask me, yes, Rodney Parade is probably not the easiest of places to go to, especially not in recent times. It maybe has been more so recently because, look, a couple of weeks ago, people have heard me on this podcast. I've been very much critical of Newport County. I have been at Cheltenham at times this season, but obviously less so now because of Steve Cotterill's return. I've honestly got a good feeling about Cheltenham at the minute, and I don't know why. I can see them going there and picking up a 1-0 win. I don't know what you think there.
Well, on our podcast, which I'm going to plug the Robins Report that we do every week. Quick plug. I said a 1-0. I said Cheltenham 1-0. We're a lot more. I feel we're a lot more solid now. I mean, we were 1 kick away from 2 clean sheets in a row with that equaliser for Elliot Nevitt last week. So, and the way we defended last week, I think I saw a stat somewhere that we made 68 clearances in that game last week. So that just shows how much better the defence is. If only we'd made those 68 at Blundell Park the other week, but we weren't able to do so. But so I'll say a 1-0.
Perfect. So let's have a look at the other game. We should probably mention it's somewhat been a bit of a big relegation weekend at the minute in this early stage, as 24th are playing 23rd, and now 22nd are playing 21st. Now it's Shrewsbury Town. They're coming up against Scotland's Crawley Town. Now, it was quite interesting what I said on the podcast last week. Shrewsbury obviously played Cambridge. I predicted, I think, Cambridge to win 2-0 and for Michael Appleton to lose his job. If anything, Shrewsbury won 2-0. Very good win. Both goals coming in the first half, and it's made me look a bit silly for the time being. But obviously they've got to try and follow up now, coming up against a Crawley side who got a relatively half decent draw against Walsall last time out. Walsall have been in very good form. Harry McCurdy did miss a penalty in that game, but a certain Harry Loft scoring in that one, or Ryan Loft even. And obviously the Conor Barrow equaliser in the second half did that. But I'd probably see it as a very good point, but you probably take it in the context of things. There were their last 3 games have been defeats. And again, you sort of see this as a bit of a crucial one going into the season. There's certainly, even with the victory, there's certainly not a lot for Shrewsbury fans to get excited about at the minute. And Crawley, I think it took the first game of the season for me to decide that somewhat to really paint a picture that I don't think they'll do a great deal this year when we beat them 3-0. We'll start seeing that. They've had moments, as I've mentioned at times, but I mean, it's sort of, I can't say I'm particularly that surprised, really. But again, look, this is a big game for both, because both of them on 9 points. They're a point behind both Cheltenham and Newport. It's a big game for them also at this early stage down at the bottom.
It is. We played Crawley earlier in the season. They beat us 2-0. I mean, that's not great. Right. There's no great shakes for them because we were terrible that day. But I quite liked them. I thought they had some good players. I mean, their back three were decent against us. Barker, Conroy, and Flint. I thought they played really well against us. And McCurdy, of course, he's a maverick, isn't he? He can produce even when you least expect him to. And you look at that side and you think people like, Lofton, Shimanga up front should be a decent front two at this level. Scott Lindsay knows what he's doing, and I think I don't know, but they are a funny team. I mean, to get a point against Walsall was decent, and with the missed penalty, they probably should have won it. And then you look at Shrewsbury, and they're a team who've they seem to be there seems to be a lot of problems there. Michael Appleton just can't seem to get any sort of consistency going. There's all this thing about the ownership going on there as well, and they've had a lot of problem. I mean, they've got a lot. I mean, half of their team used to play for Cheltenham, so I know their team very well, because of course they had Mickey Moore there as their director of football, who was Cheltenham's director of football. And last week, both their goals, George Lloyd and Will Boyle, both former Cheltenham players. They've got Tom Sang there, who's at Cheltenham. They've got Taylor Perry there, who's at Cheltenham. They've got Sam Stubbs. They've got John Marquis. They've got a number of former Cheltenham. But you look at their team, and you think, why? How on earth are they where they are? And you think to yourself that it's just because they're one of these clubs who've got on a bad run, and it's when you're on a bad run, it's very, very difficult to snap out of it and get rid of that losing mentality. And that's what they seem to do. They seem to win the odd game here and there, but don't then seem to be able to back it up. And really, having won last week against Cambridge, they really need to back it up against Crawley and get another win if they're going to pull themselves out of it. And Michael Appleton, as you say, probably if he had lost that game last week, it probably would have finished him off. So I think he's one of those managers who's under a little bit of pressure at the moment to try and turn it round. So, but I think if they're at home, I would fancy them more at home than if it was at Broadfield. So I would actually fancy Shrewsbury to probably get something against Crawley. Again, neither side's really pulled up any trees, but I think it's one of those ones. I think Shrewsbury need to win it more than Crawley, if you know what I mean. I think for the position that they're in.
Yeah, I can totally get behind that. They've come off a victory and they've got to build on it. It's as simple as that. I think that's I feel like at times when they have done that, albeit it's been quite rare this season, they've been miles off the mark. But I'm in total agreement with you. I think at home you certainly fancy them more than this Crawley side. I'll tell you for now, I like Scott Lindsay, I really do. And some of the names, as you've mentioned, Kabongo Shamanga, is a player I've liked for years. When he was at Chesterfield, obviously he had that bad injury there, but he did bits over them. And even at Swindon last season, he tore us apart in the games that we played. I mean, Swindon
did really well against us as well last season. And I remember going way back. I remember seeing him play for Oxford City when he was really young, and I thought, well, this kid's going to really pull some trees up. And he went to Boreham Wood and then got into the league from there. But he's one of those players who doesn't really seem to have kicked on with his career. He was at Peterborough and didn't quite go for him there, did it? And so really he's at Crawley. And when he signed for Crawley, I thought, well, that's a really decent pickup, and he should really do well for them. But he hasn't really kicked on again this season. It's been more Harry McCurdy who's been the one to get the goals for them. I mean, he was good against us, McCurdy. And then another player, Adeyemo, playing on the wing. He didn't play last week, and I thought he was really good as well for Crawley against us. But we didn't play well that day. And I came away from that thinking that they're probably going to be one of those teams who are going to be in the bottom half. Crawley. I don't see them being in danger of going down personally, because I think they've got enough to stay out of it. But I don't see them going troubling the higher reaches of the table, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm under the same impression. I think they'll be fine, probably because of the manager and some of the names and that. But I don't think they'll probably do much more than that. They'll do well, I think, to anything above 16th. What I think will be maybe that's sort of pushing it a little bit, but I don't know. I do like some of those players. Some of them I do question if they've maybe hit the ground running or such. Probably not. But like I said, I do fancy more Shrewsbury at home for this one. I'm going to go for 2-1. I think there'll be a couple of goals in this. I'm backing Shrews to win a game. There you go, Shrewsbury fans. I bet you're happy now. After saying that you were going to lose last week and you managed to be given his P45. It's funny how football works. Let's have a look at some of the other games coming up.
I'll sit on the fence 1-1. I'll sit on the fence 1-1, Jordan.
Perfect. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not sure if you mentioned it. Let's have a look at some of the other games coming up this weekend. Salford coming up against Oldham Athletic. Salford, 3 defeats in a row for them. Albeit they've come up against some good teams, I should probably mention. Lost to Chesterfield last week. Their previous 2 was to Bristol Rovers and, of course, my lot, Grimsby Town. Whereas Oldham, a goalless draw against Barrow last week. And they've been all right. Got a few games without a win in the league. They lost to Notts County. They drew with Barnet. But before that, 3 wins in a row against the likes of Cambridge, Bromley, and Cheltenham. Which caused Michael
shock.
The day which saw Michael Flynn leave the club. But I've generally been impressed on the whole with Oldham. I feel like they probably should have had more points on the board than they have. I know I've mentioned it quite a few times, but Salford, 3 defeats in a row, probably a side that you expect to be up there. Yes, you could probably make the argument they've played 3 good teams there that will probably be up there. But at the same time, these are the sort of oppositions that you've got to be sort of trying to get points off if you've got serious ambitions to pushing up the table. So it's quite an interesting one. And all I just keep seeing from it is Carl Robinson on the We Are Salford documentary on their YouTube channel. He's like, I'll keep banging a drum. He's a great laugh. And if I haven't watched the Chesterfield one in particular after last week, it's well worth a watch. So go and watch it. But look, as a local derby-ish, I think you'd probably say. I don't think Oldham fans will really say much of it as a derby because they are coming against Salford. It's logistically, you can maybe understand it. And I can see this being a tight game, to be honest. But I think if you're Salford, I think you've got to be 3 defeats in a row. Why not do it against somewhat local rivals to get back on track? Because I feel like they need that result, really, after the last few they've gone. I guess you could probably say the same for Oldham. With the past couple of results, but they have picked up a couple of points, whereas Salford, I think, probably could do with 3 points more, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I was impressed with Oldham when they came to us. I mean, that was, well, from a Cheltenham point of view, is one of our worst home performances that I've seen in a very, very long time. And it wasn't a surprise that it was the end of Michael Flynn's reign as our manager. But Oldham, for their part, they were really impressive. Michael Mellon was absolutely outstanding. And I think it does help when your dad's the manager to be able to get him in. It was a really good pickup from Oldham. I mean, they've only let 9 goals in this season, so they're really good at the back. I mean, they had Month and Daniels at the back against us, and they were really strong. Didn't lose a lot, and they're quite. I thought they were quite physical, not in a bad way. I thought they were just really strong all over the pitch, and they haven't really, like you say, I don't think they've had the results that perhaps they should have done. I think they've struggled to score goals. They've only scored 10, but they've only let 9 in. So there's been a lot of low scoring. So I know they got 3 against us, but hey, who doesn't? But who didn't, or shall we say, in those days? But no, they were really impressive against us, and we played Salford. I thought Salford were but Salford's record, I think, tells you everything you need to know. They won 3 in a row, and then they've lost 3 in a row, and and I think again they've been trying desperately to get out of this division for so long, and I can't see them getting out of it again this year either. I just think they're going to fall short again by the looks of it. The way they've started, 6 wins, 5 defeats, 1 draw in 12 games tells you everything, and 17 scored, 17 conceded, tells you absolutely everything you need to know. You can't get more middle of the table than that, can you? So they're going to have to try, like you say, they lost those 3 games against pretty decent sides. If they're going to get out of the division, they've got to win them. They can't lose games like that, and I think they will want to get back on the horse against Salford, against Oldham rather this week. But I think it'll be tough because I think Oldham are decent, and I think they've been better away from home than they have at home. So I think that's a really tough game. It's been an interesting one, this, and I think it'll be really tight.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. And the more I'm thinking about it, I was going to go for a Salford win, but the chances are, I reckon I'm more leaning towards a draw, sitting on the fence.
Yeah,
just because
I think so.
What you mentioned, very good defence in which Oldham have. Yes, they probably should have scored more goals, but they've got good players that can score goals.
The best defence it's the best defence in the division. They've got the best defence in the division for goals
absolutely
conceded.
Absolutely, they're going to be a tough nut to crack. I'm leaning towards. I think both teams will score, but I'm leaning towards a 1-1. What do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't go against that. I think that's I don't think that'll be far from the mark.
Yeah. So you're going for the same now?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'll stick with you on a 1-1 there.
Perfect. I know you mentioned about physical sort of sides. Grimsby are coming up against Gillingham in this one. I'm not going to rabbit on about the Colchester defeat. I know, mate, deep down, I know 1 or 2 might have been disappointed that I wasn't on the podcast the other day. But if you wanted my full thoughts on the Colchester defeat, go and check out Ryan from Up the U's. I was on there talking about it in great detail. Really good chat. And again, I probably won't talk about too much about the Gillingham game. I did speak about it in great length with Matt from Gills in the Blood. Again, you can go and check that out on his YouTube channel. It's a really good conversation, much more in depth. Basically, for me, I think the main thing I took from this is the fact that we've had a poor defeat against the way we did against Colchester. It was a bit scrappy first half, but I thought second half we really weren't at the races at all. We're now coming up again against a tough side at home, in which we're going to have to be on our guard. Yes, they've made past couple of games. Gillingham have had a couple of ropey-ish results, obviously losing to MK Dons and just about finding a way through Cheltenham despite the pressure last week. But I'm under no illusions that it's going to be a difficult game. But at the same time, one thing I have mentioned on a couple of those podcasts is the fact that so far this season, when we have lost a game, we've been very good at responding to it. So that will be a big indication of what we can maybe at least try to do at the weekend. There'll probably be changes. I think there probably ought to be. Not wholesale or anything like that. Like if Danny Rose was fit, I'd have maybe picked him over Jays Cabia, but something tells me that won't happen. I won't be surprised if maybe that Justin Ambrose or even Jason Svanthorson comes in on the wing. I don't know. We've got a very good squad to pick from. We've got good depths in all areas now, and it's only getting built more with these players coming back from injury. I'm under no illusions that it's going to be a very tough game of football. Gareth Ainsworth, yes, he's not going to be in the dugout, but you still expect his team, his style, to be in full force. What Matt was telling me the other day, we've got a very good recent record at home against Gillingham, which sort of terrifies me a little bit. As the pessimist in me, but no, look, it's 2 sides that are right up there at the top of the table. We obviously need to get back on our horse. So did Gillingham to some extent. And again, already around that top of the table, I know we've mentioned it about the couple of games at the bottom, but around the top end, for me, I get the impression this is already a big game in our season.
Yes, I think it probably is. I mean, I was impressed. Take away the result against Cheltenham. I was impressed with Grimsby. I thought they played some really nice stuff. I've always been a big fan of Charles Vernam. I think he's too good for this level. I think he's above League 2 personally. Green as well. I like Green. I think he's one of the best midfielders in the division. And then, like you say, I mean, I look at the bench last week. Danny Rose and Soonsup Bell, who started at Chelsea, wasn't he? And has come in. Jamie Walker. I mean,
yeah.
Let's not dwell on those two fantastic goals he scored against Cheltenham. They were unbelievable, especially the first one. So I think you've got a really good squad. I mean, you're the highest scoring side in the division. You're averaging 2 goals a game, and I think it's gonna. If I had the choice of what game I was going to go to in League Two on Saturday, I'd probably go to this one because I think it's got all the makings of being a really good game. Gillingham, typical Gareth Ainsworth team, put you under pressure. They're going to put balls in your box. They're going to press you. The wing backs are going to get high. You're going to have Clark on one side and Hutton on the other, and it's going to be a really good battle. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, they didn't have Josh Andrews against us on Saturday. He didn't play. Vokes played, and Palmer Holden. And I think you look at that I think in the midfields. I think the 2 midfields are going to be really interesting as well because I thought they were good. Mackenzie and Coleman in the centre for Gillingham on Saturday. So I think it's a really good battle. And again, it's a really tight one. But I think after your defeat last week, and I'm not saying this just because I'm talking to you, I think you might just edge it. I think you might just edge it. I think being at home, I think you might just edge it. And I do think, I know Matt, our friend Matt from Jill's in the Blood might disagree, but without Gareth Ainsworth, they've had a loss draw, Gillingham, and I do think it subconsciously it might just be affecting them a little bit not having Gareth Ainsworth on the line. So I'm going to say that you will edge it, and I think it will be 2-1.
Yeah, potentially, maybe sort of missing that vocal point in which is sort of the ringleader is the fact that how they've done so well. They have done well. Like I said, it's going to be a tough game, 2 different styles, some good quality in that Gillingham's got. Again, I'm gonna go for a 1-1, but I could totally see where you're coming from, and I would absolutely snap your hand off for a 2-1. But I don't think a draw is the worst result in the world either. I think as long as we,
I don't think it is. I don't think it is at this stage. I don't think it is at this stage of the season. I mean, it's still very tight. I mean, you look at that. I'm looking at the league table now, and you got Gillingham in 3rd, down to Fleetwood in 12th. It's 4 points. So you could chuck a towel over all of them. So, but playing against if you can get a win, I think psychologically, I think that'll be.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 more games to look through in great detail. Let's have a look at MK Dons coming up against Crewe, Alexandra. Very, very good victory for MK Dons last week, coming up against Bristol Rovers and putting 4 past them. It looked like Alex Gilby got a great night's sleep that night. And he came back to haunt them. Of course, that was fantastic from them. But it's one of those results. I mean, look, 3 victories in a row. I mean, yes, Shrewsbury haven't been on the best of form. Gillingham, very good victory against them. I should probably mention the Harrogate defeat as well. The previous that, I think I forgot to mention that. But obviously, going to Bristol Rovers at their place, putting 4 past them. I don't think statement results don't come bigger than that. Obviously, they've had a little bit of a tricky-ish start to the season with certain aspects, a lot of injuries, and they've had some relatively poor results in there. But that's the result that I feel like I needed to see for them to really give him a bit of a kick and to really start taking him seriously, as we maybe all thought we'd probably see MK Dons. Coming up against Crewe, Alexandra, not doing too bad themselves, albeit they did lose last time out against Bromley. Back-to-back victories for them against Harrogate, albeit that was very late, and Notts County. They're very hit and miss, Crewe. They're a really funny one. I saw a lot of blame heading towards Lee Bell for the way they set it up against Bromley. Michael Cheek scoring the early goal of that game, but we also know that they're very capable of going to these sorts of places and getting a result and really grinding hard and working hard for it. So it's not going to be an easy game for MK Dons. We know that Crewe have got it in them, but I'm at the minute. I think the past recent results, from what I'm looking at, you're also saying 9 goals scored in those 3 games, which again is a massive upside to that. Probably what you'd probably expect for the quality that this MK squad have. is a real positive going into it. It will be a tricky game, and I don't think it will be like the 4-0 high scoring as we probably did see last week. I do think it'd be tight, but with MK at home, I'm getting more. I fancy them more than Crewe in this one, but I'm more than welcome to be proved wrong.
No, I think you're right. Let's make no bones about it. MK should absolutely walk this league. They should absolutely walk it with the squad they've got. Their squad is ridiculous. It really is absolutely ridiculous. You look down that squad, and you think to yourself, why are you not, marching away with it? I mean, they beat us 5-0, but again, hey, but and then they had that blip, and like last season, they should have been up there last season and finished 17th or something. But you look down that squad. I mean, Aaron Collins is still out injured. He was their big summer arrival. You look at Callum Patterson, you look at Mendes Lang. They've got Dan Crowley coming back. They've got Hepburn Murphy. They've got Jonathan Lecker. They've got Alex Gilby. They've got Will Cole. It's like a who's who of top players in League Two. So really, they should absolutely walk this league, and I think they've got a really good manager in Paul Warne. Crewe have gone under the radar a bit. I think they've sort of gone about their business quite quietly. They haven't no real big major signings. I think they have had a bit of a blow. I think Josh March has got injured, which is going to hit them a bit. He's got a bit of a hamstring injury. Apparently, picked it up on Saturday, so that's a bit of a blow for them. So it'll have to be interesting to see how they cover that, and that might affect them a little bit. And they've got this lad Emre Tezgel, I know, on loan from Stoke, who might have a chance now that Josh Marsh is out. But MK just seem to be hitting a bit of a roll. They've won 3 in a row. They had that little blip. They've won 3 in a row, and you just wonder now whether, with all the new signings that they made in the summer, whether they're starting to bed in a little bit now, and whether they might just start to go on a little bit of a roll, as probably everybody expected that they would do. So I would expect them to win. I would expect them to beat Crewe on Saturday, probably 2-0. That's the way I would look at it, simply because, like I say, it just feels like they just might be starting to motor.
Yeah, and I totally get that. And I think I'm in agreements with you. I'm going to go for the 1-0. I think it'll be slightly tighter than the others, but I think there'll just be a moment. I reckon it'll be more a moment of brilliance and a moment of madness that I think will win the game. In that sense, we've got one more game to cover in great detail. We're looking at Barnet against Notts County. Been very impressed with Barnet over these last few weeks. 4 wins out of their last 5 in the league, with the other being a draw. I think they're one of the form teams in the league, and it's not hard to see why. Very good victories against the likes of Tranmere, Accrington, Grimsby and Crewe. Drawing against Oldham, not the worst result in the world, especially away from home. Obviously, we know about Barnet. Had a little bit of a tricky start, but have really starting to adjust back into life in League Two now perfectly. Notts County, fresh off a free week, didn't play last week, should have gone to Swindon, but their game was called off for international call-ups. And I think the thing is, for me, they've obviously had a free week. They've got some players back in now, and of course they are going to head to London for this game. I think the biggest thing for me is I need to see them do something away from home. Yes, because as you look at it, obviously most of their good results have been at home. They have picked up 1 or 2 results on the road. That win against Tranmere is certainly worth mentioning. But other than that, in fact, that might be the only one looking at it on here. But other than that, they really on the road they've not had the best of joys. But there's no doubt they're going into a game against one of the form teams at the minute who look very good and very much living up to my early season somewhat hype. I expected big things from Barnet this season, and I'm not surprised for them to. Yeah, they're really starting to hit their stride now. I think maybe the early surprise was maybe how sort of slow they started as well, and some of the results. It felt like they were pressing the self-destruct button in some of their earlier games, but they're really finding their feet now. And there's no doubt it's going to be a tricky tricky afternoon for Notts County. I did see Jaden Lucas out for the foreseeable for them, which is a massive blow. Obviously, a player that I've really liked at Town when he did play, albeit it wasn't a great deal. He had his injury problems there. But yeah, let's not make any bones about it. It's going to be a very difficult game for Notts County, this.
Yeah, it is. It is. And although Barnet did have Slicker, their goalkeeper, sent off last week, didn't they?
Yeah.
So that would be interesting to see. Our former goalkeeper, Owen Evans, is their backup. And of course, he played in the opening game against Fleetwood and made an absolute howler. So it'd be interesting. And then Dean Brennan was quite critical of him afterwards. So it'd be interesting to see if he puts him in for this game on Saturday. I like Hartigan in midfield. I think he's a good player. I think he's decent. And Shelton as well. I think there are a couple of players who impressed me when they won at Cheltenham earlier in the season. They've sort of kept quite a few of the players who came up with them, like Stead and Collins and people like that, and then just added a few to them, like Ramoni Critchlow and Offerbore and players like that. And and Osadibi's come in as well. Ollie Hawkins was a really good pickup as well. He scored against us, and he scored the goal at Wadden when they beat us. But no, they've really picked up. And like you say, Jordan, they are the form team in the division. Bit tricky, wasn't it? You know, they changed the manager and so on. But again, they're a team who should be doing better than they are. They should be higher in the league than they are. I think they've underperformed a bit. I think Jatta last season was outstanding. He was probably the best player I saw in League Two last year. I thought Jatta, and I know he had his suspension, didn't he, and all that stuff early in the season. And again, some good signings. Matthew Dennis, I'd loved him at Cheltenham. I think he did really well for Carlisle last year. So I think they're another one maybe who might come good as it goes on. I mean, they've won 4 of the last 6, so I think they're another one who might pick up. I know they're only just outside the playoffs, only a point outside the top 7, but I feel that they should be challenging for the top 3 with the squad that they've got. So whether they will, I don't quite know. But it's an interesting game, this one. It'd be interesting to see how this one goes between these two. I can see, like you say, not an easy place to go, Barnet. And I can see Barnet. I can see Barnet turning them over.
Yeah.
I can see a 2-1 to Barnet here because they do seem to be just hitting their straps.
They do, yeah, and we've seen many times in the National League over the past couple of years under Dee Brennan the way they could just destroy teams at their place as well. I think there'll be goals in this one. You've got to back Barnet with the way they're going at the minute. I'm going to go for a 3-1 home victory. But we have mentioned about Notts County, probably should be doing better where they are. Notts County are a club that I should expect to see up there every time. But I think Martin Patton, to a degree, is maybe doing a tad better than maybe I expected. I know it's probably a bit hard to say, but obviously that away form has got to turn around quickly.
I must admit, I thought it was a strange appointment. It was a strange appointment because he didn't do great at Burton, did he? And when Stuart Maynard left, I thought, and when I saw him come in, I thought, okay, that's an interesting one. But maybe he'll prove us both wrong, Jordan.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when that was made, it's sort of like my expectations for them were sort of at the floor, really. It was quite a weird one, but it is what it is. I could just see Barnet go and turning them over, as you say. Let's have a quick look at this week's Sky Bet fan feature, of course, partnered with Sky Bet, as I've mentioned. Luke proposed the question, what League Two club do you think will be the highest in 10 years' time? Now, I wonder why Luke suggested that. Obviously, with MK Dons, we know about the squad they've got and the finances they've got. They should probably in a position to go really push up the leagues. There's a good setup there. But really, if you think about it, it's easy for me to say Grimsby Town are going to make the Premier League in 10 years' time. It's not going to happen. I'd like to think we're a solid end League One club. That's certainly a way that I think we're sort of striving to. But you somewhat look at the other clubs in that league. The likes of Salford. Though I think there will be a time where Salford crack it. There's got to happen.
There has to be, surely. I mean, they've been trying for long enough.
It's got to happen at some point. Of course, they are rebranding, of course, next season. It was one thing I didn't mention going back to Orange. But other than that, I'm struggling. Probably see like Chesterfield, Bristol Rovers just being steady league clubs again. Notts County probably up there. and there's a couple of them that I could probably see being non-league clubs. Really, it all sort of depends on Tranmere's takeover. I think they've been one that's been circling the drain for a little bit now, and I don't think it's got much better. Fleetwood probably might be in League One again. Bromley seems to be on the right. There's a few. There's a few. Gillingham.
I think you've got to look at teams who have traditionally been high. I think Swindon are another club who, they've been a bit of a basket case for a few years. Let's face it. And again, if they can get it right, I do think that they could be. I mean, they spent that one season in the Premier League many years ago. But you look at them. I think Chesterfield are another one. I think they're another team who could go on and progress. Cambridge, I like Cambridge. I think Cambridge are a very, very well run club off the field. I think they really are. I think they again another one who could be a decent League One club. Notts County, obviously, are another one. Bristol Rovers, they're again another club who shouldn't be in League Two. I mean, you look at the clubs and you think you shouldn't be in League Two. You go to these places, for example, like you go to Meadow Lane, you think, what on earth? Why is this a League Two club? And you think to yourself, right, okay, because maybe it hasn't been as well run, or there've been decisions made that haven't really worked. Chesterfield, like I say, I think they eventually they will go into League One, and I think they will do quite well up there. And Walsall are another one. I mean, last season they absolutely blew it, Walsall. But again, they're another team who probably should, with the setup that they've got and the ownership, who will probably feel that they should. I mean, I think there's probably 9 or 10 clubs in League Two who say we shouldn't be in League Two, and would feel that their rightful place, open quotes, is in League One or higher. And I'll put Grimsby in that bracket, and so you put Milton Keynes in that bracket. Gillingham might be another one. So it's a real fight to get out of this division, because there's so many clubs in it who on paper and going back over the traditional sort of football hierarchy, so to speak, haven't traditionally been fourth tier clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we're sort of just looking at it with terms at the minute, obviously traditions with the clubs, as we've mentioned, and just sort of how I feel like sort of how some clubs are run at the minute. Obviously, a lot can happen in 10 years' time. It's hard to predict the future in that. But you can sort of see maybe somewhat small indications of what could happen. That's why I sort of do get those impressions of some of those others. But again, it's quite a hard question to answer, actually.
It is. It is.
But you sort of...
If you were going to say to me, right, which one will be where it is, in 10 years' time, I think I would probably say Notts County, simply because of it's in a big city. They've got decent support. They're a good Notts County, a successful Notts County would attract decent five-figure crowds, rather in the way that Bradford do. Like Bradford City were. And now look at Bradford City. They've gone on and they're at the top of League One at the moment. So I think Notts County, if they can get it right and if they can find the right formula, I think they could be the team who could go and do what Bradford are doing. And when I was a kid, Notts County were in the old Division 2 in the old Division 1 back in those days, and then fell away. And same with Oldham. Oldham are another one who've done that. And I think maybe not. Bradford is starting to come back, so I think maybe if I was going to pick one, I'd say probably Notts. If they could get it right, that they would be the one who could kick on. Yeah,
and I'd probably in line to agree. I think if I had to pick a top three, I think Notts, MK Dons, and I think Chesterfield at the minute.
Yeah.
You could just sort of see where they could be. But a really good question, and I'm glad Luke asked it. Right, there's 6 more games to go. We've got to get this under 50 minutes. So we are going to absolutely speed run this.
Okay.
You ready? Let's start.
Yeah.
Right. Cambridge v Bromley, two physical, strong sides, two good managers, two teams that have done relatively all right this season. Yes, Cambridge lost last week, as well as Bromley picking up a good win at Crewe. I'm sitting on the fence for a 1-1.
Yeah, I like Bromley. They're my dark horse. They were my dark horses at the start of the season. Only lost 2 games. Like the way they play. I like their manager. I think the system they've got works for them. Cambridge, functional team, bit hit and miss, 0-0 draw.
Perfect. Accrington coming up against Swindon Town. Very poor result for Accrington last week against Newport County. Probably another relegation side that have lost last week. Could be a damaging result. Coming up against Swindon Town, fresh off the back of a free week because of international call-ups for Notts County. I can see there being one winner in this. I think Swindon will go there with a 2-0 victory. I think they'll win this quite comfortably.
Yeah, I fear for Accrington, I must say. I do fear for Accrington. I think people say it every year that Accrington could be in trouble, but I really do fear for them this year. Can't see anything other than the Swindon win, 3-1.
Perfect. Bristol Rovers coming up against Tranmere Rovers. Obviously, Bristol Rovers will need to put last week's disappointing result against MK Dons aside. They did lose to Walsall in the league, so back-to-back defeats for them coming up against Tranmere side. Out of form, so I think they were without winning 7 or something like that. Again, they're not doing too great at the minute. I fully expect Bristol Rovers to respond. I'll probably go for a 2-1 victory for the Gas.
Yeah, like you say, Tranmere are the out of form team in the division, aren't they? At the moment, they're the ones who seem to have hit a real sticky patch. Rovers again, they're a bit hit and miss. Our former manager Darryl Clark, I did see him the other day when we played them in the Virtue Trophy, and he was saying it's been a bit up and down for them. But no, I fancy them at home to Tranmere 2-0.
Yeah, I've been really disappointed in some of Tranmere's players as well. It's got to be said, but I didn't really know what you really expected, really. Chesterfield coming up against Fleetwood Town. Very good victory for Chesterfield last time against Salford City at home. The same could be said for Fleetwood at home, beating Harrogate 3-2. It's how Fleetwood can respond to it and also add to it. We've mentioned about them being consistently inconsistent. Again, it'll probably be a tight game with Chesterfield at home. I do sort of get the impression that I do fancy them a little bit more than Fleetwood at the minute. I'm going to go for a 2-1 to Chesterfield.
Yeah, Chesterfield at home, good side. Can't see past them really. Fleetwood, they were okay when they played at Cheltenham the other week. I like the Pete Wild. I think he's a good manager. They got some decent players. I like Graydon up front. I think he's good for them. I think he'll go higher eventually. But I think Chesterfield will win 2-0.
Okay, 2 more games to look at very quickly. Colchester coming up against Harrogate. Colchester, very good victory against Grimsby Town last time out. Back-to-back wins in the league for them, scoring 8 goals in the process. Coming up against Harrogate Town. Back-to-back defeats in the league, but we've seen how they do away from home. Very capable of pinching a very good result away from home. These couple of results may be what Colchester needed to really kickstart their season. And do you know what? I fancy them to go and beat Harrogate by a 1-0. Very difficult game, though, as we've seen Harrogate in the past.
Yeah, big fan of the Cowleys. I do like Danny and Nicky Cowley. Also, Simon Weaver. I think he's done an unbelievable job at Harrogate because every year it's like Accrington. They say, "Oh, Harrogate might go down this year," but they never do. They don't ever seem to be in any danger of it. Difficult team to beat on the road. I'm going to say a draw. I'm going to say 1-1.
Okay, can't really complain too much for that. Last game to look at is Walsall coming up against Barrow. Walsall, of course, the league leaders at the moment. A 1-1 draw last time out against Crawley. Not the worst result in the world, probably considering where they are at the table. Coming up against Barrow. Been a bit interesting. Half decent result against Oldham last time out. 2 wins and 2 draws in their last 4. So looks like a tricky game on paper. Again, probably going to be tight. In fact, no. I'm going to go for Walsall 2-0. I think they'll get the job done at home.
Walsall at home, I think I can't see past them, really. Is this the year when, are they going to blow it again, though? They're top of the league, they're going so well. And you look at last season and what happened, and you think, can they do it? No, I fancy them. Again, Barrow, I'm not sure about Barrow. Can't score many, don't concede many, but don't score many either. So I'm just a little bit worried about Barrow as well, whether they might slip down. But I fancy Walsall 2-0.
There we go. And that brings to an end this week's preview show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in as always. Mark, again, thank you so much for coming on. Short notice. You've been great. Go and check him out on wherever you you're finding from. Of course, go and download the podcast, subscribe if you're new around here. We'll be back at the weekend for the review show of the weekend's game. All the best to your teams this weekend. This has been Jordan from League Two Lowdown. We'll see you in the next episode.